It has been a wonderful day for me, and I hope it has been for you too. Wanted to talk a little bit today. I know I keep kind of forgetting what I was going to talk about on the next show, but we'll overcome that as it comes. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about what clients expect from their accountant. And by accountant, I do mean someone that's good at giving strategic advice, not necessarily a bookkeeper. That's a whole different thing. A bookkeeper is there to do the day-to-day grunt work of data entry. That's what they do. An accountant has more of a big picture, top-down view, and they can give advice to help a business grow. And that's what we're really looking for, right? So I was looking at this from Accounting Web, and they talked about the reasons that clients would leave a CPA firm. Specifically, this is specifically to CPAs, but I think it's relevant across the board for accounting professionals. And the number one reason that clients leave is that the CPA does not give proactive advice. They give reactive advice. Reactive advice a lot of times is important if you're facing a crisis. You want your accountant to be able to give you good advice. The problem is the clients felt like maybe they shouldn't have even had the crisis to begin with. The next biggest reason is that the CPA wasn't very responsive. And I've been complimented several times on how responsive I am. From 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I answer my phone. Unless it comes from an 800 number or something that I know is spammy. And even then, I'll answer it and figure out that it's spam and then mark it so I don't get interrupted unnecessarily. But I want my clients to call me. I want them to reach out to me. I am available by phone, text, and email. I'm available from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, after that, it is kind of family time. And I do, you know, for myself, I need to have that that boundary. Otherwise, it's very easy for clients to kind of run over me. But during office hours, I try to be very responsive to my clients. You know, at least as far as I'm able. Again, I kind of set that expectation of if you email me, I'll respond within 24 hours. If you call me, I will call you back just as soon as I can, unless it's after 6, and it'll be the next business day. If it's an emergency, I will reach out, and people do have emergencies. They have times when a deadline that they didn't realize they had kind of comes up on them. The third reason people leave an accounting firm and go to some other firm is that they got a referral from someone they trust. It is kind of an axiom of business. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when someone they trust gives them a referral and says, hey, I've got someone better for you, this guy does my taxes and he's amazing, they're very likely to go to that person. The trick, I think, is to become the kind of accountant that clients say, oh no, my guy's even better. You know, you need to go to my guy. The number 4, the accountant didn't have the kind of expertise they were looking for. Many accountants try to either be so broad that it's meaningless or such a niche that anything outside, you know, like doctor's offices, that they can't do anything else. And I lean towards the broader end of the spectrum. And I can tell them, I have worked with real estate flippers and automotive mechanics and even electronics repair shops. I've done all kinds of things, and I've done them very well. So I can kind of say, you know, I do have the experience, and what experience I don't have, I'm willing to learn. So if I don't feel like I have the expertise necessary, I will go and get it. Unless, you know, I kind of come back to this a lot, I don't like to work with manufacturers and I don't like to work with retailers for the same reason, and that has to do with inventory. I don't like inventory, and so I tend to kind of shy away from clients that have a lot of inventory that they need to take care of. Do I know how to do it? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. But do I don't like to do it? And that's kind of the thing. If I don't like to do it, then it kind of turns my job, which I love, into a grind. Fees were too high. I moved to a lower cost firm. It's been my experience, And Brian Tracy says this, and who else? Zig Ziglar says this, and Tony Robbins, and all of the big name sales coaches say price is not the reason people change. It's not, I mean, if you are giving them what they want, they will pay whatever you charge. If you're not giving them what you want, what they want, any price is too high. But if you are meeting their needs and exceeding their expectations, they'll pay. They'll pay gladly. So price is never the true reason, although it's mentioned here, unless I'm going to go back to that. If the CPA is not giving proactive advice, they may feel like it's just not worth the money, and then say, oh, the fees are too high. Interestingly, I have heard that complaint of the fees are too high for a very low-cost bookkeeping firm, and I thought, you know, you're talking about how much you're paying them. You're paying them peanuts, and they're good, and I know. So that's, they say that's a reason. That's never the true reason. The former CPA wasn't using state-of-the-art technology. It's always kind of interesting. I'm constantly learning new and better ways of doing my job. I'm going to kind of adjust that. As in, if I find a new way of doing things that makes sense, I will immediately adopt it. I mean, immediately, right out of the gate. I will adopt that, and that will be the way we do things. Again, it does kind of have to make sense. An example would be, I didn't realize that it was an option to print a check to PDF and print it elsewhere on check stock. I just didn't, it never really crossed my mind, okay? And so last week I was having a client who was just kind of frantically trying to take care of one of her vendors, and they needed the check right away, and I just wasn't available. And I told her, I can cut the check, but I'm not here to deliver it unless they want to come, you know, 20 minutes out of their way. And then I started working with this new client, and they said, oh, we just emailed the PDF of the check to where it needs to go. Now, that's the way we do it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's genius. You know, I can just email her the PDFs of the checks that I cut out of QuickBooks. She can print them at her location, and we don't have to worry. Ta-da! So, I mean, it's just these little things, and I do try to use the best technology I can find. You know, everything from WhatsApp and Slack and texting and Skype, and any way that I possibly can to get a face-to-face with my clients as frequently as I can justify it. And then, of course, I always use the best software that I can find. So my clients should never have a problem with that. Usually the problems that we're having is not with the software, it's not with me wanting to use the software, it is with the software Intuit not being very friendly to software as a service, which is really how I would like to use it, and I hate QuickBooks Online. It's not my favorite. I find it difficult to work with, and of course you have to wait for the pages to load, and even though I have blazing fast internet here, sometimes it's just kind of a pain in the neck. And but I'm getting better at it, and as I'm getting better at it, I'm starting to like it a little bit better. So it's becoming more of an option. The number one thing for QuickBooks Online that I really don't like is that they limit you to 5 users. Only 2 of those can be accountant users. So I kind of go, because the client wants a login, and I need a login, and if I have an assistant, then they need a login, and or they have to log in under my account. It gets a little bit clunky if we can't have as many users, even though most of them won't be in the books at any one time. I would like to have unlimited users. That's kind of one of the things I've really disliked about QuickBooks Online. CPA had inadequate staff. I think this is a really top one. The other half of that is the staff was not adequately trained. Now, because I have worked with companies that had plenty of staff, and the staff had, plenty of, they almost needed more things to do. but they weren't trained properly in the system. And so it's a little bit frustrating as a client to, to go back and say, well, why did you do things this way? And they can't give a clear answer. And this applies across the board in all accounting roles. You have to have sufficient staff. In other words, they can't call and say, hey, I want an appointment with my accountant, and have them say, well, I have something, 6 months from now. People want to be seen right away. They want hands-on. They want to feel like they're important. And if you are overbooked and understaffed, you cannot reach that. You can't meet that need. It's almost better to have a couple more staff members than you really think you need, or to have them work remotely. And that's something that I think most businesses really underutilize, is the ability to have their workforce work remotely from their own space. As you can see, I work out of my home a great deal at the time. I also work in 2 clients, physically in their offices, and one of them I'm trying to both of them, trying to get them to let me work from home a little bit more often, because I have other responsibilities that I want to be able to take care of without taking away from what I need to do for these clients. We didn't have a personal relationship with our CPA, and we wanted one. I think this goes back to the responsiveness. Number one, a CPA or an accountant, I'm just going to call them accountants. If you are the client, you don't want to be the client where the phone rings and we look at this caller ID and go, oh, it's them. We don't want clients like that, and you don't want to be that client, because then it becomes a little bit more challenging to be as responsive as we would like. The clients that are like that are usually the ones that are, well, they're difficult to work with. They're the ones that are trying to hide accounts. They're the ones that are trying to hide liabilities and trying to pretend that, oh yes, I gave you everything that you need, when I really have these other 25 checking accounts over here that I don't want you to know about. The fact is, we can't do our job if you don't give us all the information. Or they're the clients that, we call and say, hey, I need to know what this check was for, and they go, well, what for? You don't need to know that. And we go, well, because I don't read minds. That's why. In order to have a good relationship and a good personal relationship with your CPA, it kind of starts with, if the CPA reaches out to you, if your accountant reaches out to you, if your bookkeeper reaches out to you, they're not trying to be nosy. They need to know in order to do their job. I can say I have likened this to the medical field so many times, and I'll probably keep doing it. It's like going into the doctor and he says, okay, I need to know your history. Do you have any diseases? Do you have heart disease? Do you have diabetes? Do you have thyroid disease? Do you have osteoporosis? Does anyone in your family have any of these things? And you go, oh, no, my medical history is clear. And then he goes, okay, well, I'm going to give you penicillin. Oh, no, I'm allergic to penicillin. Well, you told me you weren't. Well, does that mean I need to tell you about the drugs I'm taking, the insulin I'm taking for my diabetes? And does that mean I need to tell you about the thyroid medication I'm on? Does that mean I need to tell you about the blood thinners I'm on? And the doctor goes, I kind of need to know that. Again, they don't care that you're on them. They don't care what drugs you're on. They don't even care if they're, recreational drugs, but they have got to know, or they might kill you, accidentally. And it would be because you didn't disclose anything. It's kind of the same thing in accounting. We want to help you get well financially. We want to help you reach your goals financially. But if you're holding back, if you're not telling us all of your accounts, if you're not giving us all the information, it's impossible. It all of a sudden goes from being this goal of, we're going to help you grow your business, to I can't even give you any advice because I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle. So the number one reason people, quit their accountant is that they're not being proactive enough. That's really what it comes down to. Most of the things on the list I just read off have to do with being proactive. That does mean that the accountant needs to come to the client instead of the other way around and tell them what they need and what they're seeing. I was thinking about an auto repair shop I had a few years ago. It's not the one I have now. And I really liked the client. I thought he was sharp. I thought he was really good at his job. I even took my car into him. But as I was doing his books, I was seeing charges to, he happened to have a place by McDonald's, and so it was charges to McDonald's. I was like, okay, well, I guess lunch 5 times that day. And drinks at 7-Eleven several times. And, you know, I mentioned the lot-hate factor in one of my previous videos, and that's this idea that you go to Starbucks and you buy a $5 cup of coffee every day. Well, 5 times 30 is $150. I mean, that's a hefty amount of money over time. This guy was doing the same thing, only in a much larger, you know, it wasn't just a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It was 5 drinks at 7-Eleven, and I could tell from the prices, by the way, and you know, a couple of big meals at McDonald's every single day. And it was thousands of dollars that he was spending on eating out and buying stuff for the guys in his shop. And I was trying to go to him and say, you haven't paid your sales tax. You can't afford to eat out. And I was told that, oh, you know, that's just kind of the lifestyle. And I thought, then it's the wrong lifestyle. You can't do that, you know. And he ended up closing his business because he couldn't meet his obligations. And I thought, well, duh. And it's just hard because it's hard to, you know, sit down and explain to people that it's these little expenditures. We had another client that was a software developer and lived in this beautiful home, but he was having to sell it. And as I was doing his books, I realized they were eating out at convenience stores every single day. And I thought, if they would cut that out, that one thing, if they would just go to the grocery store and cook at home, they would be solvent. So I look for stuff like that. I also look for things like, you know, do I see a lot? It's some eating out, of course. You know, we all are human. Sometimes we get out and we just need to eat out. But when it's every single day, multiple times a day, and it's adding up and adding up and adding up, when meals and entertainment becomes the biggest part of a business where it shouldn't be. You know, maybe in sales, excuse me. If someone's in sales, well, then I would expect meals and entertainment to be higher because they may be taking clients out to wine and dine. But if it's, again, auto repair, then I expect that to be fairly low every single month. Maybe they have a company party a couple of times a year. Well, then I'm not going to expect that. But if it's every single day, then there's a problem. And the problem's probably in the mindset. Not so much with the client themselves, but that they just have this mindset that I need to go out and eat every day. I really see my role with my clients as a partnership. My job is not just to do the data entry. My job is to go back to the client and say, this is what I see. I see you spent $1,500 on meals and entertainment, and why? I'm seeing that, you know, a little route around the local mall, I can almost tell that someone's taken your card and gone all the way around the mall. I see duplicate check numbers. And it's my job to notice that and then go to the client and tell them that's what I see. That's why I like to have at least a quarterly meeting with my clients. So that I can sit them down and say, you know, these are the things that I see that could be improved upon. You know, again, if I see $2,500 in eating out, then I'm going to be like, do you realize that you can eat very, very well at home for $500? And I know this because I've done it for my family of origin, where there's 8 kids, and I've done it for my own family. My kids and I, our grocery bill is quite low. And I cook at home every day. I'm not interested in doing compliance so much anymore. I am interested in forming partnerships with my clients. And instead of just doing just enough to get by, to really sit down with them and make sure we're on the same page. And then, I can't do so much with catch-up. If I have a client that's bringing me old books, there's not a whole lot I can do with that. But if I'm current with their books, then once I'm current, then I like to sit down with them and say, these are some holes that I'm seeing. We need to talk, and we need to see if that's something that could conceivably even be cut out, or can you bring more money into the business? I would like to see you reduce meals and entertainment, but I want you to increase your advertising budget, for example. One of the things that I am good at is, I do love technology. I absolutely love technology. I love to have the latest and greatest of everything that I own, if it's computer related at all. So I usually have the latest software. I am usually looking for better tech answers. I can offer some advice on different types of software, both the pros and the cons. The big two, of course, are QuickBooks, along with QuickBooks Online, and Xero. They're the biggest ones. QuickBooks has the biggest market share. Xero's kind of coming in pretty close behind them. And I can talk to a client about the pros and cons of each one. There are things that I like about QuickBooks that I don't like about Xero. There are things that I love about Xero that I don't see in QuickBooks. So, and then the client can make a reasonably good judgment about, if they're going to be doing their books and how to go about doing them. The top things that people want their accountants to provide for them, number one is business planning. That's what I was talking about earlier, where we just kind of sit down and we say, begin with the end in mind. What is it that you want to get out of being in business? What's your outcome? Is your outcome to sell the business? Or is your outcome to keep it? Is your outcome to have so much money in the bank so that you can retire? If I know the ultimate outcome, then I can start working on the little things that's going to get you there. Business strategy. Again, business planning and business strategy, I see them as being very similar. It's kind of the same discussion. Create a dashboard for me to monitor my business. Now, I'm still looking at that. I'm still working on that. I haven't found one that I like that I think really gives the information that's useful to a client yet. Working on it. Business analytics. Again, it's similar to strategy and planning in that I would go over with the client proactively and say, this is what I'm seeing has been happening historically. This is what I would like to see happen moving forward. And if you follow my advice, then this is what I would expect to have happen. Representation at government audits. I will do this to an extent. I can't actually represent anyone, actually. I don't do taxes. I do not do taxes. Did I mention that I don't do taxes? I don't like doing taxes. I don't enjoy doing taxes, and I really hate the idea of being called before the state to represent a client due to a tax error. Now, with that said, an overall audit, if I have had clients, need to audit their books either to satisfy workforce services or to satisfy another government entity, I can provide that information. I can send it straight to the state, and I can then, with my client's permission, it has to be with permission, I can then talk to the government entity about what's going on. I can't really represent because I'm not a CPA, and I'm not an EA. But then again, I don't do taxes. Another thing that I can do that I'm not seeing on this list that has to do with auditing is I can actually, and I have testified on behalf of a client in legal matters concerning their bookkeeping. I have done this. I've been deposed. It's not a very fun process, especially if the opposing attorney is hostile towards me and I'm like, I have nothing to do with anything. I can just tell you what the numbers say. It's always kind of funny because the last one I went to, the attorney was like, well, what makes you a professional? And I said, I don't do it for free. That's the definition of a professional. And I have been doing this for pay for 20 years. I have forgotten more about accounting than you will ever know. So, next question. I don't know what it is about lawyers. Sometimes they just, the really good ones are really, really good, but the really bad ones, they try to make themselves look good and they end up not looking so good. Tax planning, again, that's not really my area of expertise because I don't do taxes. I don't really keep up on anything more than the broadest strokes of the tax law. Budgeting and forecasting, however, I can do, and I can do it very well. We can talk about what it would take, and I have wonderful resources, by the way, for marketing and forecasting and budgeting. Once I get the budgets in place about where you want to be, then I can actually call some of my colleagues and business contacts, bring them in and really help. I have one in particular, he's absolutely a genius in business, and then I have another one he's an angel investor and has been on Shark Tank and is friends with Mark Cuban, and I was like, you know, here's some resources I have. Brock is wonderful, and Michael is one of the most brilliant minds I have ever seen in business. So I would be happy to, you know, he would charge a fee, of course, but I would be happy to put my clients together with him. Excuse me. Business process engineering. Okay, it's interesting that they phrased it. Interesting that they phrased it this way. I don't know why I can't always talk in front of the camera. I don't know why I can't always talk. This just means sitting down with the client and figuring out their processes and helping them come up with standard operating procedures that are going to help them in their business. My friend Michael is an absolute genius at this. Absolute genius. I mean, he is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever seen at distilling complex ideas down to something very simple. And then coming up with a process for it. And I've learned how to do this from him. So I am not to his level, but I am good at this. Technology consulting. Tech is my thing. I love doing it, so I can do that. Complete outsourced bookkeeping services. That's something I would talk to a client about on a case-by-case basis. They say complete. And then they also have bookkeeping sharing duties with my staff. I would suggest that if you want books done, it probably should be a complete outsourced thing. The reason I say that is not just to make things difficult for my clients, to be honest. We can work with the staff, and we're happy to work with the staff, but it's been my experience that if the staff is aware of things like how much the outsourced firm is being paid, or you know, there's just parts of accounting that you may not want your staff to know. And if they have to be in the books, even if we try to firewall it, you know, firewall them out of certain portions, then there's room for some jealousy and competitiveness, and it becomes a little bit difficult sometimes. A compile, review, and/or audit my business records. I'm very good at that. Payroll, again, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I can do it, and I can put you in touch with some wonderful payroll people. And then tax return preparation, which of course I've said I don't do. The thing is, I have resources on every level. I have no problems helping my clients get what they want, but I have to know what they want, and I have to start by having all the information. So that's really what clients are looking for today. I'm going to talk some more at some point when I remember it again. I've got to start writing some of this stuff down about some of the best ways to get those done, and about you know, why your bookkeeper or your accountant requests some of this information. Again, I keep saying this over and over. It's not about being nosy. That's it for tonight. Have a wonderful